God bless everybody today. It is March 22nd of 2025. And I've been wanting to get to this video for some time. I just had not done it because I've been concentrating on the Paradigm 2030 chart and trying to get that all broken down. And I have put an updated chart on my website. And as far as I can tell, all elements are pretty much on that chart at this point, and it's completed. So unless I can find additional timestamps or something I can add to the chart, the only thing that I will be adding to the chart or changing the chart will be like additional current events that are happening as we move forward in the next 4.5 years. Um, that's awesome in my opinion, because that gives us the map to the Feast of Trumpets of 2029 as we move into this next year of 3 blood moons, and how that's going to change the whole Middle East and the world as we move forward in the next year. So a conversation had arisen about Jeremiah 25, was brought to my attention. I said, well, that's really interesting, because that was what I had built my original premise of the Paradigm 2030 chart off of, was Jeremiah 25, because it gives you not only a date stamp to a modern day king of today, but it also talks about the first year of Antichrist and this transition of that year. So when you go back and actually review those Paradigm 2030 charts and how I extrapolate the modern day leaders of today that reflect leaders of the past exactly in the position that they're in and the years that they were in that position, you can tell this is a history lesson reflecting a future event that's getting ready to happen in front of us. So to me, Jeremiah 25 tells you exactly where you are at this very moment in time. And if you'll sit down and watch what I'm getting ready to show you, I can not only show you what's getting ready to happen, I believe, in the next year, it will also explain how the Paradigm 2030 King stamps work, as well as it will give you a date stamp around a specific time that Antichrist will rise in March of 2026, I believe, based on this Paradigm 2030 chart and these date stamps that reflect kings of the past to future kings today. So when you go to Jeremiah 25 and you go into verse 1, it indicates a number of elements that are extremely important and to understanding why you are in the latter days at this very moment in time, in this Shemitah cycle, in the strong generation, and why this is getting ready to happen at this very moment in time in the next year. And I mean, this whole chapter literally is built so that you can understand what's going to basically happen between March of 2025 and March of 2026. And I believe that I can actually show you this through these king stamps that I've been showing you for years now. So in Jeremiah 25:1, it comes to Jeremiah. He has a vision concerning all the people of Judah or Israel, and that this is in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah or Israel. That was the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. Now this is very confusing, because there's this transition in Jeremiah from Gog of Ezekiel, when Gog of Ezekiel dies and is brought back as an Antichrist figure. And so you're going to see this transition, and it's going to give you a date stamp and a year of when this is going to happen based on what Jeremiah is telling us. And like I say, he's repeating history. He's going to show you that this reflects a future event that's getting ready to happen in front of you in the next few months. So we need to pay attention to what he's telling us here. So this might be a little longer video, but I'm going to walk through all these transitions so you understand exactly what's getting ready to happen in the next year. And if you know Jeremiah 25, you'll understand there's judgments against all these nations in the Middle East that reflect and radiate throughout the whole entire globe or planet or earth. So, in Jeremiah's time, in the 4th year of the leader of Judah or Israel, he had a vision. Okay, this reflects exactly today Issac Herzog, which is the leader or the president of Israel. Now, please do not think Netanyahu is the leader of Israel. You can go Google this, okay? It's not that hard. Netanyahu is the prime minister, not the leader or the president. The elected president or leader of Israel is Issac Herzog. Okay, and Netanyahu plays a major part in this. And I've shown you the connection with that name of Nathaniel and how that matters into the future. But we're working on Jeremiah 25 today. So, if you take Issac Herzog and the time that he's been in place from July 9th of 2021, and his 4th year would be between 2021 2025, his 4th year would be between July 9th of 2025 and July 9th of 2026. So I'm setting you up with a specific period of time that's going to set this whole process into motion. If you go and I'm going to preempt this, if you go to my paradigm chart, the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar, when he's resurrected, would be in March of 2026, which would fall within this parameter of time. As we move forward, I'm going to show you how this 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, works with these years of these leaders today and how that's going to affect you in the next year. Now, I want you guys to start realizing that God does things for a reason. Look, when you go into the 4th year of Jehoiakim, it's stated in Jeremiah 25:1, Jeremiah 36:1, Jeremiah 45:1, and Jeremiah 46:2. Why? Because he's telling you that all these events in these chapters overlap and they all reflect the 4th year of this king. And so they run tandem or concurrently together as one, if you want to look at it that way. So you could read each of these 4 chapters and realize what's getting ready to happen in this year of 2025 between these 2 dates, because it tells you that's what's getting ready to happen. So I want to go through a quick summary of those 4 chapters and why they link together. Jeremiah 25 prophesies the destruction of Judah and Babylon, talking about as we're going into the 7th week of Daniel and the eventual judgment of Babylon, or in this case will be Turkey, along with a warning of nations surrounding Judah or Israel, emphasizing God's wrath and the consequences of disobedience. Jeremiah 36 recounts God's instructions Jeremiah to write down all his prophecies, including those against Judah or Israel and all other nations, and that Baruch was to read them publicly. Now this was his scribe. Baruch was given to Jeremiah as a scribe by God so that he could write down what Jeremiah prophesied. But the king of Jehoiakim, or the leader of Israel, burns the scroll, highlighting the people's rejection of God's word and foreshadowing their impending judgment. And this is important right now because a lot of people believe that God is just going to step in and save Israel at this moment in time, when that's what not the prophets told them. All the prophets told them clearly they are going under judgment. And what does it state? that 2/3 of them will perish by plagues or sword, and only 1/3 of the population will be removed to the hidden place for the 1260 days. So they need to understand they're getting ready to go under a massive judgment in the next year. And Jeremiah 45, now these are summaries, like I say. The message to Baruch, Jeremiah's scribe, emphasized God's judgments upon Israel or Judah and the need for Baruch to focus the people and himself on faithfulness rather than personal ambition, promising him protection even amidst the coming destruction. And this applies to you today, because you have to understand a lot of you are going to be martyred here in the next 4.5 years as we move forward, and that a lot of you are going to perish before we actually get to a rapture event. So this is extremely important. And that if you understand there's not a pre-rapture, or I get it, rapture's not in the book, but we're going to use rapture because that's what everybody understands. It's a removal of the true believers of Jesus when he comes back the second time. The rapture, whatever that word, however you want to use that word, happens on the seventh trumpet or the last trumpet. And you are not appointed for the wrath or the bowls, but you will go through tribulation into the abomination of desolation, to the point where the two witnesses rise, which occurs when everybody else is taken up or removed through that rapture type event on September 10th of 2029, which takes you into the prophetic year of 2030, the completion of the 2,000 years that Jesus was crucified, and then comes back directly on the Feast of Trumpets of 2029, taking you into 2030. And when you go into Jeremiah 46, I talked about this so much. We are getting ready to watch a judgment against Egypt because of what's going on down in Gaza, as Turkey's getting ready to go down and invade into Lebanon, deal with the situation there, and then go down into Palestine for the Battle of Gaza around October of 2025. And what does it also talk about? The Battle of Carchemish. We talked about how this would occur or affect you around May of 2025, because what happens? Erdogan invades into Syria, into Lebanon in March through Turkey, and then he starts up a second front against the Kurds in Carchemish, which is around the Euphrates River, up around the border of Turkey and Syria, and how that then would then force the Kurds to the east, to Iraq, to Erbil, Iraq, and then he would drive that column from Carchemish to meet the original attack column into Lebanon, and then they would go down into Tyre, Lebanon. This then would force a siege on Tyre, Lebanon, and a completion of a siege of Tyre, Lebanon around July of 2020, end of July of 2025, based on Alexander the Great's movements. So look, he's warning you, if you're not paying attention to what's going on in the Middle East right now and how all these areas are being affected, then you're never going to see what's getting ready to happen. But when we're looking at Jeremiah 25, he's going to tell you exactly what's getting ready to happen in the next year. And he shows all this destruction against all these different nations and lists them out, so you can understand which areas of the Middle East are being affected. But do understand, he indicates in this that it will radiate throughout the whole world and throughout the whole earth. So it's not going to just be against the Middle East. These judgments are going to be against all nations across the globe. So what I'm trying to get across to you is that when you look at these date stamps of these kings, they're linking chapters together, so you understand that all these events are overlapping and happening all at the same time. So when you go to the 4th year of Jehoiakim, you can see that each of these verses are literally affecting that year of that king. And so we can, if we can use this king today to mirror or mimic the king of the past, which I believe we can, because I've isolated about 5 of these guys down now that work in tandem or in conjunction. They don't contradict each other, guys, and you're going to see some of that in this build that I have here. So let's go down, and I want to look at another verse in Ezekiel 26:1, because it also talks about this similar event, because it's affecting Tyre, Lebanon, an attack on Tyre, Lebanon at the same time. Why do I know this? Because it talks about the 11th year of Zedekiah, which would be 2025, in the first month. Okay, the month of Nisan. Okay, the month of Nisan this year falls between March 30th and April 28th of 2025. And if the Paradigm 30 chart is right, then it will play out that we will see an attack on Lebanon, or an invasion by Turkey into Lebanon right after Ramadan, which ends on March 30th of 2025, as we go into the month of Nisan. And Nisan, the month itself, runs between March 30th and April 28th of 2025. And look at how the Middle East broke down just recently, as we had a complete blood moon on March 14th of 2025, which was on Purim, and we have a partial solar eclipse and a new moon coming up on March 29th of 25. Right after March 14th of 2025, what occurred? You saw a massive attack by the United States on multiple targets in Yemen on the Houthis, as well as what? The Gaza ceasefire totally collapsed, and we saw a land invasion happen into Palestine again, and they were forcing evacuations to the southern portion of Palestine right after this blood moon occurs. Okay, so don't tell me the blood moons don't affect you. You have 3 of them in the next year, with 3 solar eclipses that are going to affect what? Blood moons affect usually Israel. Solar eclipses usually affect all the other nations. And there's a reason for that, because the blood moon is a smaller astrological body. They believe the blood moons reflect Israel. When you go into the sun, it's a larger body. It's going to reflect the nations, and it's also not good to cover the moon or the sun and have this happen 3 times with a complete blood moon, and also partial or solar eclipses into the next year between March of 25 and 26. This is unprecedented, and it's interesting also that these blood moons between the next year, as you can see here, both end up on Purim. Okay, so it's extremely important. Look, this next year is going to be extremely volatile. Everything's getting ready to melt down. If you don't understand that, or you can't see that, and I don't know where to go with this, and you're just not watching the right things out here, I guess, because there's no way you can't see this getting ready to happen if you know what you're looking for. So right after March 14th, 2025, the whole Middle East started melting down. Okay, you've even seen an amplification up in the Russia-Ukrainian war, and possibly even amplification of China-Taiwan. Everything is amplifying right now, okay? Right after this period of time, and Ramadan occurs, and possibly an invasion by Turkey into the month of Nisan, you have Passover. Okay, this is extremely important, because this is the time when Jesus was crucified and then rises, and then we have a mimicking probably in the next year here of an Antichrist raising as we get into 2026. This could be a real problem. Okay, it gives you the dates of Passover. Now, what I think is extremely interesting is it talks about the first year of Nebuchadnezzar, okay, up here in Jeremiah 25. And I indicate that that has to happen in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, which would be between July 9th of 2025 and July 9th of 2026. When you look at Erdogan, it's interesting because when you go into Jeremiah 52:30, it talks about the 3 and 23rd year of Nebuchadnezzar. Well, that would be 2026, okay? But then it also talks about how in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, we have the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar. So this is where this transition, nobody seems to get. In the 23rd year of Nebuchadnezzar is the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar. I know that sounds confusing, but if you think about it, it's not. The 23rd year of Nebuchadnezzar would be between March 14th of 2023 and March 14th of 2026. Okay, if Antichrist comes out in March of 2026, this would be that transitional period that we're getting ready to watch. So the 23rd year of Nebuchadnezzar would be between 2025 2026 as you're getting ready to go into an Antichrist phase in March of 2026 based on that Paradigm 2030 chart. Now you sort of want to think about the blood moons that we just had and how that's going to affect us with 3 complete blood moons into March of 2026 as we move forward here. So think about this. You had a complete blood moon on March 14th of 2025. That would be 22 years later. You're working into the 23rd year of Erdogan. It's also that 1st year that you're going to see an exchange or a transition from Gog of Ezekiel to Antichrist between March of 2025 and March of 2026, as I'm going to get ready to show you here. And you also have a potential 6th seal event that occurs between March 3rd or February 17th of 2026, which is an annual solar eclipse, and another blood moon on March 3rd on 2026 on Purim. And remember up here, so you have 2 blood moons into Purim 2 years in a row. That's usually a bad sign or a judgment against the nation of Israel. So if you're following this up to this point, that 23rd year of Nebuchadnezzar and that transition into the 1st year of Antichrist would be between 2025 and 2026. Okay, so based on the Paradigm 2030 chart, Erdogan would die on a 6th seal event around March 4th of 2026, which would fall in this gap of time, right after a blood moon event on March 3rd of 2026, which would be on Purim, and we would see an Antichrist figure rise on or around March 19th of 2026, which was Nisan 1. If you look at the time that Issac Herzog's 4th year comes into play, July 9th of 2021 to July 9th of 2025, the 1st year of Antichrist would fall between these 2 dates, between July 9th of 2025 and July 9th of 2026. Okay, you can see that up here because that death of Erdogan would occur around March 4th of 26, and then he would rise around March 19th of 2026, which would fit within this gap or period of time here. Based on this Paradigm 2030 chart, this would fall perfectly in these date ranges. Okay, Issac Herzog's 4th year would end on July 9th of 2025. Antichrist's first year would fall between July 9th of 2025 and July 9th of 2026, because he would rise on March 19th of 2026 around 1 Nisan, or the beginning of the new Jewish year. Okay, so look how these dates all line up. I hope I'm explaining this properly, because it really matters that you can line these up and realize that you're in this gap of time in the next year as we move from March of 2025 to 2026. So look at this. So if the fourth year of Jehoiakim is March 9th of 2025 through March 9th of 2026, then the first year of Antichrist would fall in this gap of time between March 19th of 2026 and March 19th of 2027. This would also work with the fourth year of Jehoiakim, because he's running between July 9th of 2025 and July 9th of 2026. And this date of the rise of Antichrist would fall between this gap of time between March 19th of 2026 on Nisan 1. Also, the 23rd year of Erdogan would fall between this gap of time between March 14th of 2003 and March 14th of 2026. So this date would fall between this gap of time here also. All these kings work together simultaneously and do not conflict each other if you actually want to look at it in this proper light. Look, I've isolated 5 kings down that work in tandem, in conjunction together, from past to future, actually, that are in place today. That's how this works. And once you understand, when you look at Jehoiakim, as Issac Herzog, when you read the Bible, when you read Jehoiakim, think Issac Herzog today. Okay? When you think Zedekiah, think Reuben Rivlin today. When you think Nebuchadnezzar today, think Erdogan today. Okay? When you think Darius the Mede, think of the leader that just got elected in to the Kurdish state on October 20th of 2024. Okay, because that's his first year. And if you go to Daniel 9 and 11, it tells you it's the first year of Darius the Mede. So you need to understand, all these kings work together for a reason. So if July 9th to 2025 and July 9th to 2026 is the fourth year of Issac Herzog, March 14th of 2023 to March 14th of 2026 would be the 23rd year of Erdogan, or Gog, that he would die on a 6th seal, and then you would have a resurrection around March 19th of 2026 to March 19th of 2027, that you have the first year of Antichrist, and that Antichrist would rise around Nisan 1 of March 19th of 2026. So when it comes down to it, and you can extrapolate all this down, the first year of Antichrist would fall in the fourth year of Jehoiakim, in the 23rd year of Nebuchadnezzar, or Gog, okay? Because you have a transition between the death of Erdogan into an Antichrist figure in March of 2026. So hopefully I've shown you how the transition works between Gog, which will die on a 6th seal event on March of 2026, and he will rise in the Antichrist in the same month of March of 2026. Now this is interesting as you get into this prophecy more, because it goes into the destruction and judgments against basically the whole Middle East and what's getting ready to happen in the next year. And so if we go into each of these nations, you're going to see a map start to form in front of you, and I'm going to start to go through that with you. But let's look at this next portion here, because this is extremely interesting, the way God sets things up. He never says anything without a reason or purpose. It's extremely important that you must look at every word that God says, because usually there's a nugget in there that you need to understand something. So let's go back to the beginning real quick. He has this vision in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, that this would be the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar. Then when you come down to the 2nd verse, which is where we're at now, Jeremiah the prophet spake unto all the people of Judah or Israel and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And he talks about something that's extremely important here, if you can understand what's going on above that in that first verse. So when you get into the 3rd verse, it says something really interesting. You've got to try to link all these things together, okay? It's important because God's trying to show you how to link it all together if you know your history. This is extremely important. If you don't know the history of the world or of the Jews, you're never probably going to understand how this all works. So he talks about the 13th year of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah. Okay, this is extremely important because the son of Ammon, king of Judah, was the father of Jehoiakim. Okay, I think he had 4 sons, but anyway, Jehoiakim was one of them. And he talks about how okay, so he talks about the 13th year of Josiah, the king of Ammon, or the son of Ammon, king of Judah, even unto this day. So he's talking about he has the vision at this time, but this is going to radiate into the future, okay? And this is extremely important because if you go look at King Josiah, who reigned in Judah roughly around 640 to 609 BC, I hate when I do that. I'm going to change that. Sorry, guys. Is known for his religious reforms, which included removing idolatry and restoring the temple and worshiping Yahweh. If you go back and look at this, the 13th year of Josiah was 627 BC, which is interesting because that was the beginning of Jeremiah's prophetic ministry, when he saw that vision of the destruction of Israel, and how his ministry is said to have begun on the 13th year of the king of Josiah in his reign, that corresponds with 627 BC. And in 627 BC, the prophet Jeremiah began his ministry in Judah, which lasted for 40 years during all this destruction of not only Israel, Jerusalem, but the fall of Babylon. So interesting how he lines this up. So what I'm trying to say there is that it's interesting that he gives you this 3rd verse with the 13th year of Josiah, letting you know that this was in 627 BC when Jeremiah started his prophetic mission of 40 years into the future, okay? But that's when this first portion of this verse is about Jeremiah's time. But then we sort of seem to have this transition, because I keep lingering on this 3 and 20th year and why he would state that. And I then takes me back to Jeremiah 25, indicating that possibly this was the 23rd year of Nebuchadnezzar, which would then take you into the 1st year of Antichrist today, because this is a mirroring effect from history to future, actually in the next 4.5 years as we move forward here. So the 3 and 20th year caught my eye, because then I linked that back to the 23rd year of Nebuchadnezzar, which would actually be the 1st year of Antichrist if you look at it in today's lens. And what was the reason for this? Because of all the idolatry and all the terrible behavior, not only in Israel, but throughout the world, and how this is going to bring a judgment against not only Israel, but all nations on the earth. So, as you get down into these verses, I want to bring your attention to verse 9. It says, Behold, I will send and take all families of the north, saith the Lord, and Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant. Interesting how he states that Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, will be used as his servant and bring them against this land, Israel, and against the inhabitants, therefore, and against all these nations around and about it. And you're going to see a ton of them listed here as we move forward in Jeremiah 25. You're going to see all the nations in the Middle East that we've been talking about for the last 8 years in videos at least, and how they're going to be affected in the next year. And it will utterly destroy them and make them an astonishment and a hissing and a perpetual desolation. And this will affect the whole land, will be affected by desolation and this astonishment, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon for 70 years. Now, when you get into the 70th year, you have to think about the 70th week of Daniel, because 69 weeks were broken off, and the last week plays out at the last 7 years of time before we go into the millennial, which we're in that period of time. We're in this 7-year Shemitah cycle of September 27th of 2022 to September 9th of 2029, and you're also in the strong generation of the Jews, the 80th year between May 14th of 1948 and the completion of that generation on May 14th of 2028. You're also on September 9th. As you go into September 10th, actually, you would have the completion of the 2,000 years from the crucifixion of Jesus on February 7th of April of 30 AD on 14 Nisan to his second return on the Feast of Trumpets of September 9th of 2029. I'm going to make a correction on that because the Feast of Trumpets starts on September 10th of 2029, so that would be your rapture date, or you're moving into the first day of the 2030 calendar of the prophetic Hebrew calendar. The Shemitah cycle ends on September 9th of 2029, so that brings you into the Feast of Trumpets at September 10th of 2029, taking you into the first day of 2030. So hopefully I explained that a little better. I know that was a little confusing. This leads us to verse 12, and the 70th week of Daniel being completed, or the last week in the end or latter days, which is the 70th week of Daniel. Okay, so you can link all these things together. And it talks about how this, in the next verse, talks about, and it shall come to pass when 70 weeks are accomplished. So you have your first 69 weeks to the death of Jesus, your cut-off period. You go into your last week, which is in this Shemitah cycle between 2022 and 2029, that I will punish the king of Babylon. Okay, that's Erdogan, and that nation, which is Turkey. Okay, saith the Lord, for their iniquity, and the land of the Chaldeans. Okay, well, that's up around Lebanon and through that area. Also, the Chaldean is interesting because when you go out and actually look at the maps, that area of land primarily is runs from Iraq. It also runs through southern Turkey and parts of Iran. It also deals with the ancient portion of Babylon, so you're talking about Iraq itself. And so that's what I mean. He's showing you a footprint that he's going to affect here soon. Okay? And you need to understand that this is getting ready to happen in the next year. And so that he's going to make all these areas that are getting ready to be listed as we move through Jeremiah 25 a perpetual desolation. Okay, that means that anybody that's talking peace in the Middle East is not or does not have a clue what they're saying. It clearly tells you there will be no peace. There will be no peace. It will just keep melting down. It will just be a wave after wave after wave, which if you think about it, you're in the seals or the birth pains, which he told you. You're going to see waves and waves of this, and then you're going to see what? An Antichrist come out soon. So it makes a lot of sense that he's talking about this in the 70th week of Daniel, in this Shemitah cycle, in this strong generation. And I've been talking about that. That's how the whole chart is built. Look, now I'm going to state this again. If we move out of this Shemitah cycle, the whole paradigm 2030 chart falls apart because none of the kings then will reflect kings of the past because you'll move it too far into the future and it won't work anymore. And I'll be the first one to admit this. But right as of now, we seem to be playing directly into this next 4.5 years. And I'll give you the timestamp right now because I always do. So if this is March 22nd of 2025, you have 1,634 days from today to the Feast of Trumpets of September 10th of 2029, when I believe, in my opinion, you will be raptured. So you've got approximately 4 years, 6 to 7 months now, because when you get to Passover, it's actually 4 years, 6 months exactly. So you'll have to sort of extrapolate. We're almost into Passover here on April 12th, I believe. So you can tell from where March 22nd is from where we are today. So I want to point something out really important in verse 13. Okay, which he's going to expound on as we move forward into this chapter, because a lot of people think this is only for Israel or the surrounding nations. But as you get into this chapter, you're going to realize this is a global event that's getting ready to happen. He says, I will bring upon the land all my words which I have pronounced against it. So all these prophecies Jeremiah has had Baruch written down. Is going to prophesy and have these judgments play out against all nations. Even all that is written in this book, which Jeremiah hath prophesied against all the nations. For many nations and great kings shall serve themselves of them also, and I will recompense them according to their deeds and according to their works and their own hands. Okay, now there are judgments against nations, and there's also judgments against peoples. This one's going to affect not only nations, but peoples. This is going to affect everyone. Everyone is going to have to make a decision which side of this equation you want to be on. Do you believe in the Son, Jesus, to get to the millennial, to get to the next side of this equation? Or do you want to fall down the path and end up in the lake of fire and be extinguished out of the book of life forever? And once you get into that beast system, you can't be on it, so you have to figure out how to work around it. So he's telling everyone, nations as well as people, they're going to be judged based on their works of their own hands, okay? He says, For thus saith the Lord God of Israel unto me, Take the wine cup of this fury at my hand, and cause all nations, all the nations to whom I send thee, to drink it. Now, a lot of the nations he's going to list here are in the Middle East, but as you go forward into his prophecy here, it basically tells you it's across the whole entire globe or the land of the world. And they shall drink and be moved and be mad, turn crazy. Look at what's going on out here. Nothing makes any sense to people with the seal of God, because nobody could have this much craziness, madness, wokeness in the world. But he tells you they will become mad. They will, and he tells you clearly they'll have a drunkenness on them. They won't understand. That's why you don't throw pearls at swine, because they won't listen, they won't get it, they won't care, and they're probably Canaanites, and so they just won't understand anyway. Because of the sword I will send among them, which are the people, okay? It's going to affect the nations, but it's going to affect the people. And if you're part of this bad behavior in your nation, it's going to be a harsher judgment upon you. Then took I the cup of the Lord's hand and made all the nations drink, to whom the Lord has sent me. He doesn't give them an option. He forces the cup down their throats, okay? He's literally going to judge them for a reason, because we're at the end of time. Man has gone past the point of no return. We're at the doomsday clock, 11th hour, 59th minute, 59th second, into the millennial period. We're in the last 4.5 years, basically, guys. And then you're going to go into the millennial period into 1,000 years, which will take you away from all this madness that he's throwing down on everybody right now. But if you have clarity and truth in your eyes, you will see what's getting ready to happen. And this is going to break out, I believe, in the first month of Nisan here, which happens between March and April of this year. So let's see if Turkey breaks out, and we'll go from there. And if he doesn't, then I'm just wrong. So look at the nations that he's showing you this is going to affect. Okay, if you go back to that original map, which we will do, you'll realize that he indicates all of these. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into these nations and their judgments. What I want you to understand and concentrate on as we're looking at these maps, the area of land or footprint that he's giving you that's going to be affected in the next year, and the devastation that's getting ready to happen in that year between March of 2025 and March of 2026 as we go into an Antichrist phase. So I'm going to use this map and possibly another map as we move forward. I'm doing this as we go, so I'm trying to put this down, show you the areas that are going to be affected in the next year and how that's going to affect you. And if you go back and look at how I've put this down, I've talked about Alexander the Great's movement and how this is going to affect all these areas that we're going to talk about, how even Iran would fall as a nation in January of 2026. So it's important that we understand what's getting ready to happen here. So he tells you clearly all these nations are going to drink of the wrath of God. Now, he's not talking about the bowls at this moment in time. He's talking about his fury and how he's going to make the nations pay for not following his laws, not following his word, not following the Torah, not following the Ten Commandments, not really following even his Sabbath or anything in general, and that he's going to force this cup down the nations, force them to drink it, and he's going to place judgment and lamentations against all these nations in the next year based on those timestamps above. So look at what he's talking about. He's going to affect Jerusalem and the cities of Judah. So you can sort of see where that land falls. Here's Jerusalem here. The land of Judah actually moves down in through Egypt, through actually portions of Jordan, around the Dead Sea. You got the Mediterranean Sea up here, and actually this is Lebanon up here. This is Tyre, Sea of Galilee, different things like that. So you can sort of see that landmass of that first judgment that he's placing down on that nation of Israel in Jerusalem and Judah. Now the next judgment is against the king of Egypt. And we talked about how not only in the 4th year of Jehoiakim it would affect the king of Egypt, but also start to affect, as I stated, the Battle of Carchemish in May of 2025. So and that's sort of interesting because he's telling you the Battle of Carchemish will end up against the Battle of Egypt. And I talked about how those two columns from Turkey going down into Lebanon and coming from Carchemish down into Lebanon, they would meet together and then end up with the Battle of Tyre. He's sort of giving you that right here and explaining to you that in Jeremiah 46. And you can see that he's talking about this area just below that going into Egypt. Now we're going into Africa also. So you got Jerusalem and that area up in here going down into Judah, into Egypt, which takes you down into Africa. So this whole area is going to be affected. We just talked about how it would affect Palestine and Ashkelon and these areas around Palestine in that area. And so that would be affected, as well as, before we go back to the map, we'll look at Edom, Moab, and Ammon. So now he's talking about this area around Palestine. And as you go down into Edom, so when you go to the other map, you can see that he's talking about the two sides on either side of Judah now. He's talking about Gaza, Palestine over here, as well as Edom to the southeast of there. Then look where he takes you, all the way back to Tyre. Okay, now this is extremely important because Tyre is going to be affected here real soon. So he takes you back to Tyre, Lebanon. Okay, and I'll go to that map too here in a second. And then he also takes you to Dedan, Tema, and Buz, which are in the Arab nations. Okay, so Tyre, Lebanon on this map would be up here around Lebanon. And then Tema, Dema, and Buz, or Dedan and Buz, are down here in the Arab peninsula of Saudi Arabia. So like I say, on this map, you got Tyre up in here, and then you've got the Saudi Arabia area of those three areas down here. And if you go into verse 24, it pretty much indicates all the kings of Arab nations will be affected by this. And then, interestingly, he goes into the king of the Medes and Islam, which is Iran, okay, and how the king of the north would come against all these kingdoms, and it would even affect the kingdom of Iraq. So it talks about Elam and how that's Iran. It talks about Babylon and how that's Iraq. And it talks about this area up in here, which is mainly the Kurds, okay? Now, interestingly, when Syria fell as a nation, the Kurds got pushed to the Euphrates. This is going to be a pretty important battle here when you get to May of 2025, because Turkey's going to then attack the Kurds again at the Battle of Carchemish. So all these nations through this area is what he's talking about. So at this point in time, you have to look at the map. Iran, all this area of Turkey, all the way down through here, Egypt, even Put and Cush, through Yemen, through Arab, all the way around this area are going to be that footprint of what? The Beast Kingdom, the old Ottoman footprint, or the footprint of Alexander the Great of the past. Okay, extremely important. Now, when we're talking about this invasion by Turkey going into Nisan of this month, this next month of March 30th to April 28th, I want to draw this out real quick. Turkey will come down into Syria and invade into Lebanon, okay, around Nisan of this year, March 30th to April 28th. Then you're going to see another column form here in May with the battle against the Kurds, which will force them to Iraq because now they've been forced to the Euphrates. And then they're going to get shoved to Iraq, probably to Erbil for the Battle of Gaugamela, which will happen in October of 2025. But before that, in May of 2025, this column that attacks the Kurds here and drives them east will then align with this original column that comes down from Turkey into Lebanon, and these two columns will join for a siege on Tyre around July of 2025. Once that completes, Erdogan will move his column of armor through Israel between Jerusalem, between Jerusalem and Jordan. So he'll drive around to Palestine for the attack of the Battle of Gaza of October of 2025. Now there's two things happening here. Not only do you have the Battle of Gaza, which collapses Egypt because it's against Egypt, Turkey and Egypt. Egypt will collapse back into their country and they will be completely destroyed, which will then also allow Put and Cush to be absorbed into the 10 nations. But at the same time, Erdogan is driving his armor back to Tyre for the Battle of Gaugamela, which happens in October of 2025 also, which would then collapse the Kurds down to Baghdad, talking about Iraq in this portion of the verse, down into Elam for the destruction of Iran. This is extremely important because when the Kurds align with Iran, and the destruction occurs upon them through Turkey, that would basically complete Daniel 8. But at that moment in time, because of the absorption of Iran into the 10 nations, all this land mass in this whole area here will be completely absorbed. 10 nations then will be formed for an attack on Jerusalem in February, March of 2026 based on the Paradigm 2030 charting. So this is where it talks about Elam, talks about the Kurds up around Erbil, Iraq, also into as far over right now as the Euphrates in Syria. They actually were all the way over to the Mediterranean, but now they've been shoved to the Euphrates, and they will get then shoved to Iraq and then end up in Elam for the Daniel 8 effect and completion of that. And it clearly tells you that all the kings of the north, far and near one with another, and all kingdoms of the world which are upon the face of the earth. Not just the Middle East, the face of the earth. He's letting you know that this is going to affect the Middle East tremendously, but it will radiate out through all the nations. That this cup of judgment is going across the globe or the planet of the earth itself. This king of Shishak is Iraq or Babylon. So another thing that I wanted to point out in verse 26, and this is extremely important. So he talks about the king of the north, which is Turkey, and how it's affecting all of the nations because they're getting ready to go under the beast kingdom, okay? Because they're getting ready to do this transfer from Gog into Antichrist, and how literally he's talking about the king of Babylon or Iraq would drink after all of these up here. So he's drinking lastly, and that would then cause what? A sixth seal event that would bring in an Antichrist as we move forward. So I think that's extremely important because you have to realize that he's going to judge the whole Middle East as well as the world, but you have this 10 nations of Ezekiel 38 and 39 after that Daniel 8 destruction of Iran. Once the Kurds align with them, you're going to have all those nations go back to Israel, and then they're destroyed in Ezekiel 38 and 39. And like I said, it takes 7 months to bury all those bodies. And so that's what as you get into this, you'll realize the destruction is going to be on a monumental level, And so just sort of realize that these 10 nations are going to be decimated all on basically one day, and that it's going to take 7 months to bury them as you move forward also into this March 2026, as you move forward into into that year of 2026. So it's something I just wanted to point out as we go forward here. So you're going to get all these nations literally affected, but he clearly states that the king of Babylon or Iraq, in this case mimicking Turkey, in end times will drink after all the other nations, and then he will die, and that will probably be based on what I've been talking about, a sixth seal event as we move forward. That event happens on March 4th of 2026 based on the Paradigm 2030 charting. It tells you in verse 27, drink ye and be drunken, and spew and fall, and rise no more, because the sword which I send is among you. If they refuse to take the cup at thy hand and drink, then shall thou say unto them, thus saith the Lord of hosts, they shall certainly drink. He will not give you the ability to not be judged in the end period of time. He is going to bring all inhabitants against the world into judgment. All of them. Okay? He says, I begin to bring evil unto the city which is called by my name, Jerusalem. So he's telling you Jerusalem's getting ready to go under judgment. There's no peace, peace, peace. All this talk about peace and how God's going to save these people is ridiculous talk. And that should ye be utterly unpunished? He's asking, for all you've done, Israel, Jerusalem, and nations in general, should I not punish you for the things that you've done? Ye shall not be unpunished, for I will call for a sword upon all inhabitants of the earth. Of the earth. Not just Jerusalem and Israel. He's talking about the whole globe. The whole earth is getting ready to go under judgment. You're getting ready to go under judgment until when? The Feast of Trumpets of 2029, September 10th, when he comes back and raptures the people that believe in the true Son of God, which is Jesus, which is the only open door that you have to get out of here, okay? Now you can die, and if you believe in Jesus, you'll be raptured, okay? But who wants to die on this planet, on this rock? Okay, we'd like to, hopefully all want to get to the end of the story and get to the rapture event without getting or having bad things happen to you and your people or your networks. Look, we all have blessings if we have the seal of God, and God will protect his people to a certain degree. But he also tells you a lot of you are going to die in this process because he's going to put you under judgment. He's going to put you through fire. He's going to refine you. He's going to know that when you make it to the millennial, that more than likely you're not going to fail at the end of the 1,000 years, and we're going to have to purge you again, okay? So it's extremely important that you understand these things. Therefore, he says in verse 30, therefore prophesy thou against them all these words, and say unto them, the Lord shall roar from the on high, and utter his voice from his holy habitation. He shall mightily roar upon his habitation. He shall give a shout as they that tread the grapes against all the inhabitants of the earth. All of them against all inhabitants of the earth. It's extremely important that you will not be pre-raptured. You will go through this to the seventh trumpet, and then you will be taken away, regardless of whether you're dead or alive, as long as you believe in the Son of Jesus. The Son of God is Jesus, okay? Extremely important. Then he says what? In verse 31, The noise shall come even to the ends of the earth. Not the middle, just the Middle East. The whole earth, from one end of it to the other. Nobody gets away from this judgment. Nobody. He says, for the Lord has a controversy with the nations. He will plead with all flesh, all people on the earth. He will plead with you to figure this out before you lose your souls in the lake of fire and you get blotted out of the book of life. Or at least if you get to the point where you believe in the Son is Jesus, then you at least have the ability to get to the millennial phase. He will give you that which basically you deserve. He will give them that are wicked to the sword. Okay? And it's against all flesh of the earth, saith the Lord. Behold, evil shall go forth from nation to nation, and great whirlwinds shall be raised up from coasts of the earth. And the slain of the Lord shall be at that day from one end of the earth even to the other end of the earth. They shall not be lamented, neither gathered, nor buried. They shall be dung unto the ground. Okay, I'm sorry, but he's talking a bleak picture here. And I'm the one that has to explain this to y'all so that you understand how bleak it's supposed to be. Because that's our job, is to give you the truth out here, right? Isn't that what we're supposed to be doing, right? The slain of the Lord shall be at that day from one end of the earth until the other end of the earth. I've talked about how, and I'm going to go down here real quick. Death will be so great across the earth that it will litter the ground and they will not be buried. It takes 7 months to bury the people of Gog of Ezekiel 38 and 39. Can you imagine what's getting ready to happen over the globe in the next year and how these people won't be buried? And from that, you'll see a lot of disease and a lot of other things come from that. And that during the six seals that affect a quarter of the earth, not talking about the seventh seal because it's a half an hour of silence when the 144,000 are selected, so it's not a judgment type phase in the sense it's affecting this planet. So you have 6 seals affect a quarter of the earth, or 2 to 3 billion people, potentially another global pandemic. When Trump pulls the troops out, Erdogan invades, and you get a similar effect in 2019, okay? And then what happens? You get 4 trumpets affecting a third of the planet before Antichrist rises on the 5th and 6th trumpet, and another 2 to 3 billion people are being affected. So what is he telling you up here? You're not going to be able to bury all these people. They're going to be littered across the plane of the earth from one corner to the other corner. All 4 corners of the planet are going to be affected by this, and it's going to be utterly destruction. That's the only way I can read this, guys. You need to know what's getting ready to happen in front of you. It's getting ready to break out at the end of this month. You're going into Nisan 1, March 30th. Can you not see what happened when the blood moon came on March 14th and how this is getting ready to turn ugly? And I mean ugly. Figure it out, folks. He's telling you what's getting ready to happen is not going to be easily processed in your minds, because you look, when you think it's bad, and it is bad, when a plane of 64 people go down and they're all destroyed, and that's a terrible event. But that's not 2 to 6 billion people, okay? This is how bad it's going to get. And you need to understand what's coming. And I'm trying to, and have been trying to for years, to explain to you what's getting ready to happen in front of you. Now you're here. And before long, you're not going to have the capacity to do anything about it, okay? Because there won't be any food on the shelves. It'll be so hyper-inflated, and stagflation of jobs is getting ready to happen in the whole world, and the economies and everything are getting ready to melt down, and nobody's watching Turkey at all. They don't even know he's getting ready to go down into Lebanon. They're watching all these other things because they don't understand the story and what's getting ready to happen. But God tells you clearly what's getting ready to happen. I'm going to go back and reiterate the top of the chapter here, at the top of the study. Go look at the 4th year of Jehoiakim, or Jehoiakim, however you want to say that. This can reflect today Issac Herzog, and does. And you can see that in these verses. And I showed you how that's all going to melt down the Middle East in the next year. So do me a favor, please, and get ready. I keep saying, if I give you any hope, and this is terrible to say this, if I give you any hope, you won't do anything. You'll just wait till the last minute, or it'll just be too late and you won't get anything done. Do what you need to do to get ready. Do what you need to do to get your families around. Do what you need to do to inform your people what is getting ready to happen to them. They may not believe you at this moment in time, but as I've been doing for the last 8 years on videos alone, I've planted seeds to let the people that at least have been following me for that period of time understand what's getting ready to happen to them. Most people won't believe me because it's too date sensitive, okay? Everything on my chart's date sensitive. Oh, that'll just throw everybody in a tizzy and they'll all walk away. That, or I'm not pre-rapture, so they'll all walk away. Okay, that's fine. Maybe you'll come back into this room once you realize that the seals are breaking on you and you're still here. I'm just saying. Okay, so there's the question I keep asking. When do you realize as a pre-rapture person you're not being removed, and that the whole Middle East is melting down in the next year, and that you're still in this process of trying to get out of here? I love it. Right now you got all these theories going on. Passovers, rapture, it can't happen. It's a fall feast thing. Okay, 2 Nissan, red heifer sacrifice this year. They're not even close to being ready. It will happen next year on 2 Nissan. Okay, you need to understand there's a lot of false stuff going on out here. Gain the truth, understand what's going on, connect the dots, and let's see what happens in the next year as this breaks down. And I'm guarantee you, once Nissan hits, it's going to start. So God bless and have a great night.